So just before 3 p.m. today, officers received a call in regards to a male suspect who had stabbed multiple people at the residence of 374 Hoskins. And during that time, we received multiple calls from people, including victims that were actually stabbed from the suspect, as well as a call from someone who was able to get away from the suspect that was not actually stabbed. So again, we received multiple calls from suspects in regards, or excuse me, we received several calls from victims in regards to the suspect stabbing them. At that time, officers arrived on the scene and confronted the suspect who was on the front porch of this residence. The officers gave several verbal commands to the suspect to drop the knife. After several verbal attempts, at some point during that, it became unsuccessful and the suspect continued to have the knife in their hand. We can also confirm that officers had taser deployments, as well as confirming at least one officer discharged their firearm. At this point, we're unclear if more than one officer discharged their firearm, and we're unsure if when at least one officer discharged their firearm, if it actually struck the suspect. But at this time, we know that the second taser deployment was successful for the officers at scene, and the suspect went down. They were able to get the knife away and secure the suspect. At this point, we can confirm that we have at least 3 victims that were stabbed, that we believe were stab wounds from the suspect himself. The suspect, we believe, at some point may have injured himself prior to officers' arrival. Again, still early in that preliminary investigation and trying to determine that for sure. But at this point, the suspect has been transported to the hospital, and at last check, he is in critical condition. So with that, I can try to answer any additional questions.
Was he shot?
I'm sorry?
Was the suspect shot?
So we're unsure of that at this particular time.
Okay.
We do know, like I said, at least one officer discharged their firearm, but it's unclear at this point if the injury sustained was just from a stab wound and a gunshot wound as well. So we just generally talk about a local area hospital. We try not to give out specifics on that, but he was transported to a local hospital.
Sorry, so you're not sure if a bullet pierced the suspect, is what you're saying?
Yes, we're unsure of that at this time. That's going to be part of BCI's investigation, but we do know at least one officer discharged their firearm.
And according to scanner chatter, there was multiple victims all over the age of 50. Can you confirm that?
I can confirm we did have victims that were older. I'm not exactly sure of their ages, but we did have one particular victim that was elderly age, so he was definitely older than 70.
And is this family? Do they live in a house here? Can you elaborate on any of that?
Unfortunately, we're still so in the early preliminary stages of it. We're not quite sure if they live there or if they were visiting. We're just not sure at this time.
And are there any updates on the conditions of those victims?
So at this point, we know that some of them were listed as critical, but we believe that they have all been upgraded to stable, but I'll confirm that before we leave.
And there's been multiple officer-involved shootings this summer. Talk about the dangers that these officers face.
Yeah, every day that anybody is employed by the Columbus Division of Police and they put this uniform on, they are not only putting their life at risk, but they are also here to protect not only themselves, the people they work with, but the general public at large. We understand, we talk about it all the time. As the temperatures go up, we know the tendency for violent situations can also go up. So I just want to commend every officer who not only responded to this scene and did everything they could to protect everyone in this particular neighborhood, but any officer who shows up and takes any call for service during their tour of duty.
And none of the officers sustained any injuries?
Thankfully, no injuries to any of the officers. We do have several other witnesses that were not part of being stabbed by the suspect, so we're working through all of that to try to gather as much information as we can.
Are you able to say how many years of experience with CPD the officers had?
Yeah, we're still working through that because, like I said, it's an active BCI investigation. We don't have those specific information in terms of demographics yet, but as soon as we're able to provide that, we will.
And then
About how long do you expect to be out here tonight?
So with this scene being, even though it's contained to pretty much one residential area, because there were so many victims and there were so many witnesses that were involved, we're going to be out here for quite a while, because we know in a neighborhood like this, there's quite a few cameras on residences. We can also confirm that there was a delivery service in the area that unfortunately some of the driver and their assistant for that delivery service witnessed part of this. So it's making it a very large and active scene.
So did it happen inside the house, and then, or was it all
So
outside?
we're still trying to determine exactly what happened prior to officers getting here, but I can tell you the altercation between the suspects and victims, at some portion of that was inside, and we believe some of that was outside. And I could also confirm that the interaction between the officers and the suspect happened outside.